Okay, welcome back. I actually wanted to inject a little bit of history today. I mentioned that every once in a while, when I think it's relevant to the class, or there's a topic in computer history that is relevant to what we're doing, or something about the date, that I like to inject little tidbits about where our field comes from. Those of you who are watching live in Berkeley right now, today is the 14th of September, and it's the anniversary of something. I will prime you by asking, here's an image of a check from Bank of America right around maybe 1950, compared to a modern check. By the way, I don't know if people still use checks, but for those of you who don't use checks, it's a thing that your bank gives you and you can write numbers on it and money comes out of your account. If you have written a check anytime recently, what is missing from this check that you would expect to find on a typical modern check? The numbers along the bottom, right? Which are the routing numbers, among other things. So a lot of people don't know that before sort of the modern checks we're used to, any piece of paper could basically serve as a check. You could just write, pay whatever to whomever and sign it. Then the person who received the check would have to take it to their bank. The bank would send it to whichever bank issued the check. This was all done manually, and people at the issuing bank would manually check the signature against a file of cards with people's signatures on it, and that's how they would verify withdrawals. Amazing but true. But in California, Bank of America, which at that time was actually the world's largest bank, they had pioneered the concept of bank branches. So there wasn't just one B of A, they were actually all over the state. California was growing in population, and there was no way to get data across the branches. So now, if someone wrote you a check and their account was at B of A, and your branch of B of A didn't happen to be the one where they wrote the check from, the check would have to be mailed to whichever branch that person had their account at before anything could happen. And basically, it was taking longer to clear checks than the rate at which people were writing them. So there was a adventurous concept that was hatched between Bank of America and SRI International to develop a machine. This is possibly the first example of software in the infrastructure, and certainly for software and computing in the service of finance, to design something called the Electronic Recording Machine for Accounting. So they paid SRI, which is Stanford Research International, the Stanford Research Institute in Menlo Park, sort of arm's length affiliated with Stanford University research think tank. And in 1952, they signed a contract to build a demo system. The demo system was successful, and General Electric agreed to actually build some production systems, the first of which went into operation on September 14th, 1959. So today is actually the anniversary of that day. The system was able to handle 33,000 accounts per hour in automatically examining and clearing checks. And subsequently, another 31 were built, and they were deployed at various points around the US. And by 1962, all B of A banking was done through ERMA. And eventually it was replaced by the IBM 360, about which we'll have much more to say in a future Computer History Minute. But one of the technologies that was invented to make this system work was that MICR font that you're probably used to seeing along the bottom of checks. The goal was to have a font that was both machine readable, but also robust to visual obfuscation, so that if there was a problem with machine reading, a human being could still make out what the numbers were. And originally, the way this worked is that those numbers printed on the bottom of the check were printed with ink that was impregnated with iron oxide. And the way that they were read was not optical. It was actually read by a magnetic recording head like you would find in a cassette player. So the invention of that font and the technology to read it was one of the things that allowed the machine to automate a lot of aspects of check processing that previously had to be done manually. This also pioneered the idea of a credit or debit card that was linked to your bank account. And basically information about your transactions could be received by the bank almost in real time, sort of certainly within a day. There are really only two surviving installations of this. One of them is at the Smithsonian. And the other one used to be in Concord, California, and you could actually visit it. But they just, literally a couple of months ago, dismantled it and shipped it to the Computer History Museum in Mountain View, which is setting up a temporary exhibit space for it. So sometime in the near future, relative to September 2023, you'll be able to go see at least some parts of one of these machines. And if you want to read a little more about the technology and how it got to be developed, there's this QR code. You can also follow the link in the slides. But I thought this was interesting because it's one of the earliest examples of putting computing into the infrastructure to handle sort of consumer and business operations.